Good morning, my beautiful friends. I hope you're all well, happy, and healthy. My word of today is Pixar. Pixar. Firstly, thank you so very much for all your private messages. I promise I will get back to you all. I've just been a little bit inundated, but I promise I will get back to you. So my word today is Pixar because of psychologist Dacher Keltner. Now, he worked alongside the director of the film Inside Out, and the director and him worked together very closely for about 5 years, I believe, and the director was really keen to make a film about emotions, a cartoon about emotions, and then label them. So emotions like fear and disgust and sadness and joy and happiness, and label them correctly and give them characters and give those characters a voice of disgust or a voice of sadness. And obviously there's lots of different emotions, hundreds of different emotions, and we all would describe them slightly differently. But it's a really clever film, and it's a really good thing to do in our life, to label our emotions, and sometimes even giving them a character or a funny name or a voice can be really quite beneficial. So a lot of people at the moment are saying to me that they're feeling very sad and desperate because they've lost their job or they're in the midst of losing their job. And then on the flip side of that, they feel quite judgmental of themselves because they can see that there's lots of other losses in the world. So they end up being quite hard on themselves because they're saying, well, I'm losing my job, but other people are, suffering greater sadness than me. So one of the first things that I do in counselling is quite often that is a feeling that people will say. They will say, this is terrible for me, my life is terrible, but it's not as bad as X, Y, and Z. But comparing and contrasting doesn't help us. We all know that there's a lot of sadness in the world at the moment, but actually comparing your sadness to somebody else's, it doesn't help, and it doesn't take away their sadness either. So often with feelings of loss of a job, because sometimes for people a job is meaning in life. It's not just about finances and paying the mortgage or paying the rent or buying food. It's about that the job gives them purpose, and it's who they are, it's who their identity is. So quite often with any kind of loss, I would work with somebody for them to actually label those feelings and actually sit down and look at sometimes worst case scenarios. So, what happens if I do lose my job? Well, what happens next? What happens if I can't pay my rent? What happens next? And we go down the line, because sometimes confronting our worst fears can make life easier, because then we've got a path. So if we know that we're going to lose our job and we're worried about finances or we're worried about meaning in life, we've looked at the worst case scenario, as frightening as it can be, and that often happens with illness as well. We go down the path with somebody like me, a counsellor, or a very trusted friend, that you can say, well, this might happen and that might happen. And of course, all of those things might not happen. But if at 3 o'clock in the morning we're laying there and we're worrying about them, if we get up and write them down, and then we can look at them, each and every single one of them. So I suppose it's about, what I'm saying is confronting those fears with help, with a friend, with a somebody special in our life, or writing it down. Sometimes just writing the questions down and then popping those questions under our pillow at night, and then sometimes an answer will pop up for us. But the worst thing we can do is compare our sadness or our grief or our loss to anybody else's, because it doesn't help us and it doesn't help them. So just sending you lots of love. The other lovely film is Up with Pixar. They've got some really clever films talking about emotions. So maybe writing down those emotions, seeing where the fear comes from, and labelling it, we can start to see where it is in our body as well. So sending you lots of love, and keep strong, guys. Thinking of you all. Bye.